you have to give your permission, I think. So there's hopefully a box there to click. So again, just very quickly before I start, because we'll have various people coming in. Again, please could everybody remain muted. Please put questions or observations in the chat box, but there will be opportunities to physically ask questions at certain points during the session. So welcome to this Repair Cafe session on learning from sort of technical and physical repair. The session is split briefly, split into two sections. Just a kick-off from myself, just on broader issues to do with how we deal with the process of repairs, and then I'll pass over to my colleague Dave, who will share findings and experience from technical repair. And we have a number of our own repairers on stream now, who can help Dave with further questions. So without further ado, I will start, hopefully get the slides working. So always the challenge. Right. So the webinar is brought to you by a number of organisations, including UCA and Farnham Repair Café. So just a bit about the background, and again, just real big picture. Now 2,087 repair cafes, according to the Repair Cafe Foundation, in the world. That has stalled, and I've even seen a number go down, actually. There was, prior to lockdown, it seemed to be almost 5 or 10 a week, so a lot of growth. UK had doubled really in the last year or so, from about 65 to about 100, 125 at last count. So, prime proportion of repair cafes in Northern Europe. So yes, for most of you on the call, repair cafes are about physical repair, but also what's strong from our experience and our research is the community and social dimension to repair cafes. But also in certain product categories, it is this sort of physical, through the physically repairing products, it repairs, memories and emotions. And you see this also on the repair shop on BBC One, that sort of wider link there. So Farnham Repair Cafe itself is a collaboration. Legally it's a charity, but it then collaborates with a range of organisations here. So it's set up as the first UK charity as a repair cafe in 2017. And we've run 58 sessions, and we try and document our impacts. So we've had nearly 3,000 people through the door, nearly 1,300 repairs, a consistent repair rate of around 65%, significant environmental impact reduction, which links back to our objects of the charity. We also, people like what we do, but also we monitor the savings for people not having to buy a new product. So we're over £100,000 worth of savings to the citizens of Farnham. We've also, through one of our brilliant trustees, now produced a tool that helps identify the CO2 emission savings associated with physical repairs. And that's a freely available tool on the Farnham Repair Cafe website. And if you want more information on that, we can direct you to that. So again, just in my experience of being involved in a range of environmental projects over 30 years now, I've found many environmental projects, particularly at a local level, very much like pushing up a rock up an isosceles triangle. Very, very hard. But with our repair cafe, we're almost having to turn away interest. We have so much interest, and so obviously it chimes very much with people's interests. Through actually preparing this presentation, I've actually realised that we do you know, although we're not necessarily written down, and maybe the trustees should think about this. I think probably our next meeting I may bring it up, is that we actually do have a set of values, and we're very, you know, people orientated. So, you know, you don't have a repair cafe unless you have your volunteers. So it was great, you know, we decided to run a dinner for our repairers, and pretty well all of our core repairers and their partners attended. So we have a, you know, a focus on people. We also have a learning culture as well. We're trying to learn, and each session we learn something different, whether it's technically or, you know, on the front desk. So we're trying to, you know, learn all the time and improve. And also, you know, really we really apply a sort of keep it simple, stupid approach. Really, we discuss many options for development, but essentially, you know, we've decided to just focus on basically running repair cafe sessions and doing them better. And we are adapting a bit to COVID that I'll come back to at the end. So, you know, within our repair cafe, again, we have tables for electrical, electronics, mechanical, for bicycles, laptops, furniture, and clothing. And we have a very diverse range of products that have come through our repair cafe. Have a very, you know, diverse range of backgrounds of the repairers, and, you know, many who are retired or semi-retired, a number who retrained, you know, prior to, you know, because of their interest, prior to lockdown. So, you know, our entrepreneur there, basically he went to a technical college to retrain himself in furniture restoration in preparation for his retirement that does not exist. So we have a process for our repairers. So in terms of our recruitment, you know, we'd perhaps every other session we'll get somebody coming to, you know, showing interest in becoming a repairer. We'll explain the process to them, and then we have a couple of forms that we ask them to complete. And then what we've started to do is slightly formalize more our process of observing their approaches, you know, to make sure that they're happy with what we do, and we're happy as well. So we have a process there, not too onerous, but, you know, is a process. And fortunately we've only had really in our whole sessions one major challenge with one of our repairers, which is good. We have a front desk where people come and book in, and as part of that process we have a series of product exclusions, such as certain B2B products, you know, Petrol-Powered products, and there's a number of others. What we also do is, particularly when we get products that look like antiques, we also have a process, or products that are unusual, where we check those out with our repairers before we take them on board, because of you know, any challenges, i.e. an antique falling apart in somebody's hands, for example. That doesn't work for us, and certainly it doesn't work for the customer. Have a couple of forms that record various information on the product that is then completed by the repairer, you know, whether it's fixed or not, and this way we can collect a range of other data. We also pack test the electrical products, you know, as we go through the process. And we can have, you know, sometimes sort of individual repairs, sometimes people getting involved. What we also decided to do was to experiment through with, you know, the use of 3D printing in repair. So again, we've invested in a 3D printer and have started some customized repairs around a couple of products: an umbrella handle, you know, button on a light. And also, you know, one of our trustees said, "Oh, why don't I make a clamp, you know, a tool for our repairers?" He said that on a Thursday night. On a Saturday, he'd done it and had delivered it. So, so there's sort of this pragmatic nature of repair cafes as well. So I'll just break, very quickly here for any questions, maybe picking something up from the chat box, Dave, if there are any questions. If not, I will pass over to yourself and the other colleagues for the technical repairs.
No, just one point, Martin, on the slide to the people. In fact, I think there's only one lady on the slide, but in fact, there are quite a few ladies who work as volunteers and also in the front desk. So we aren't as overrepresented by men as the slide shows. It needs updating, really. But
yeah,
I'll put some pictures.
I mean, to be fair, I think we were open to anybody. In a sense, things do follow this. You could argue the stereotypes in the ladies are involved in the 100% in the clothing and textiles. We have struggled to get more ladies involved in the technical repairs. We had 2 ladies that worked on electrical and electronics, one older lady and one younger lady, but I think they had some challenges with their time. And then we have other people, as Dave said, on the front desk. So we are absolutely open to we are open to diversity entirely. So and would welcome more from all sorts of different groups. So unless there's any other questions, I will pass across to Dave.
Good, yeah. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dave Smith. I'm a retired management consultant, and I'm a volunteer repairer at the Farnham Repair Café. This is all about technical repair tips, pragmatic, practical repair tips. Basically, our repairers are worth their weight in gold. They've got a lifetime of formal training, self-tuition, trial and error, intuition and gut feel, and you can't put a price on that, as I'm sure a lot of you appreciate. In fact, when I was collecting the tips to put in these slides, I had enough material to keep me going for a couple of days, and even then I wouldn't have even scratched the surface. And of course, like most of you, we know how to buff the scratch out of the surface, don't we? So this is a high-level summary of the various tips. Hopefully not too technical, not too shallow. They're across the main categories that we work on, from bikes to 3D printing, as Martin was talking about. Plus also I've got a case study of the perils of cleaning and repairing vacuum cleaners. But even in this summary, I couldn't possibly present all the details. So bear with me if you'd like more. Maybe we can expand this as we go along and maybe share that as well. I'm going to pick up some of my favourites in the slides rather than try and read every point in there. So please scan the various points, and at the end of each slide you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions. There are 1 or 2 health and safety aspects I'm going to pick up, but you could almost make that an entire topic on its own. So I've not put every health and safety topic in there. I guess one thing I'd say, we don't cling to the tips and practical ideas we've got like precious grandchildren. We like nothing better than to pass them on as well. Skills transfers, I would have said, with my old job hat still on. So if anybody wants to learn, okay, the tips are going to be useful, but there's no substitute for coming down to a Repair Cafe session and actually learning from somebody else. We all love to impart those skills. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight into bikes, which is one thing I tend to dip into. And the first one really is quite obvious if you've ever had a bike, that there's no easier way to test a problem, to try and fix it and to then test the bike than if you've got a bike stand. Relatively inexpensive, even a good quality one. And I really would urge anybody who's trying to repair bikes, that would be the minimum set of equipment that I would recommend. I will go straight into a safety aspect here, and even if somebody says, can we check the parcel rack on the back of a bike, we'd still check the brakes, the wheels, the tires, gears, cables, everything, to do a quick safety check. And boy, considering some of the condition that some of the bikes come in, that's just as well, really. I find a powerful head torch, and I know a lot of my volunteer colleagues do as well. A head torch probably saves you a spare hand when you're trying to hold or fix something, and arguably is almost one of the most important and useful tools that we use. Clearly, I guess most repair cafes are going to be the same. We can't stock a whole set of parts and certainly not have them on site. So we quite often ask an owner to purchase new parts. So we'll make sure we give them a very accurate description of what they need. With older bikes, we need the old standard tools. And of course, for newer ones, you'd want metric tools. So very often we'll be hunting around our colleagues trying to find the most appropriate spanner, screwdriver, hammer, sometimes even. And it's useful having all that equipment available. WD-40 often comes to our rescue, particularly on an old bike. Many a time we've had to release nuts and bolts because before we can even start doing anything. But we're always wary of making sure when you lubricate something on a bike, there are plenty of places where you don't want any lubrication at all, and obviously brake pads are those. In the course of keeping safe and clean, then it's quite often a good idea if you're dealing with a chain, for instance, or some dirty wheels, to have gloves, paper towels, and I guess we're all more and more tuned in to keeping ourselves clean, hygienic, and so on in days of COVID. We will always make sure when we have finished repairing whatever the person asked us to do, to again do a quick scan of all the major functions of the bike, running through the obvious things, tyres, brakes, and so on, so that we pass the bike over. But unfortunately, I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, you can't always repair everything. So we make it very clear when somebody leaves, if there's something, particularly if it's a safety aspect, what the safety implications of what they're leaving with are. So we make sure that even if something isn't completely fixed, that the person appreciates what needs fixing next time. So I think I'm about ready for the first Q&A, Martin. So anybody have any particular comments on those or other things?
I think the main two questions were have we seen any issues with local bike shops, you know, and no, we haven't. I mean, we did have somebody that who had a sort of second-hand bike business, I think, that volunteered, but then he left. But the other question, I think more precisely, Dave, is have we seen any electric bikes, and if we have, are there any issues, or, you know, thinking about it, what would be your advice there?
Right, two questions. The first one, I guess something may be cynical about this answer, but in fact, we genuinely recommend other shops, be it a bike shop, be it any other business, where, for instance, we need to get parts. We recommend people go to the local PC shop to get mice, cables. I've recommended people go to Halfords, because we have one locally in Farnham, to pick up brake pads, and where there's a complete range of things needed fixing on a bike. We've recommended people to go to a local repairer who's actually used to be a volunteer with us, to get more significant repairs done. So that is a genuine thing we do, and hopefully local businesses who work in the same area respect the fact that we're doing a basic job to repair things for people who either don't have the money, the eyesight, or whatever, but that we genuinely send people to buy stuff from local shops where we can't do that. So what was the other question, Martin?
It was around electric bikes. So,
electric, yeah.
So basically, have we seen any issues, or what would be your advice anyway?
There is a lady who comes in with an electric bike, but to date, we haven't needed to touch anything to do with the electric to it. But I guess it's only going to be a matter of time before we get more. I suspect if it's something basic, I don't think electric bikes are exceptionally complex in terms of electronics. I would think our electronic guys would have a good shot at testing out battery capacity, any issues with the leads, and failing that, as I said, our fallback would be sending people to a specialist, an increasing number in Farnham who look after electric bikes.
Building on that point, what we see with a number of products is collaboration between the teams. So, for example, sewing machines, there'll be some collaboration, and again, correct me if I'm wrong with anybody on the call, between the mechanical guys and the ladies in the sewing and clothing. So we do see certain types of products that collaboration. So I think with our skill base, exactly as you say, it might be a collaborative, approach dependent on the actual problem. Another question arose.
David, it's Kevin. A quick add-on to the electric bikes question. There was a question about electric bikes in our last Facebook Repair Cafe session.
Okay.
So yeah, they obviously started to come in. A lady had tried to get an electric bike out after a couple of years, ready for use it during the COVID lockdown, but the batteries are flat. So they will become more and more popular, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. Is that there's been a massive increase in people buying bikes in under COVID. So yeah, maybe we'll see more of those coming into repair cafes, particularly maybe electrical and even scooters, because they changed the law on some of those smaller, scooters where not the old moped, but the scooters where it's like a board. So I think they've opened up the market for that as well. So it's another question that's not on bikes, but I'll pick it up anyway, for whoever is on the do we repair jewelry? I do vaguely remember we've done some. Maybe Steve, do Dave or Anthony, maybe, you remember?
I haven't repaired any jewelry at any of the sessions, but I regularly repair items for my wife. And if I've got a set of jewelry, magnifying glasses, minute little screwdrivers and so on. And I sort of pick up on your point, Martin, about cross-sharing tools and so on. There's never a session goes by when I learned something from one of the other repairers, and in fact sometimes it does take 2 or 3 people from different disciplines to repair a particular item, and many of the time I've been thankful somebody else had a particular shape of screwdriver which I didn't. Because
again, that's an observation for me, who's come in, and I'm not an engineer by training, and but what I have actually seen is not just sort of identify problem, diagnose and solve. I've seen, a lot of very creative repairs by the lateral thinking in a number of the repairs that was very interesting to me. It's a different sort of creativity, very interesting to me.
There's a question about videos on the web. Did you want to tackle that? I think
maybe we'll pick that one at. I think later, let's keep perhaps focused on the technical side.
Okay.
So I think there's a question on the Facebook model, and I'll pick that up at the end. So I think the videos. I think there are many videos on repair cafes around, and I think. If somebody wants to, what is the current word for that? Bring those all together. I think there'll need some sifting of the quality of some of those, but perhaps that's something for another day. So let me just try and move this forward. Have I moved it forward too? Yeah. So clothing and textiles.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much for the, as Martin said, predominantly ladies who do the clothing and textiles. But as you also said, we do learn things from each other. And one of the most important things is the first point. And in fact, it actually comes up in several different categories, because when you want to do a patch, particularly to a piece of important clothing that's very visible, we first ask whether the repair needs to be hidden. like invisible repair, or whether it's going to be a matching piece of material, or even, I'm not sure how many people opt for this, but you could make a feature of a patch. And obviously the importance of that is clear, that we want to make sure we repair the item in a manner the owner wants. There's a number of items here on sewing machines which I can really read, because as I'm not a sewing machine person, but they are fairly obvious, a lot of them. But the first one is a safety one, and obviously a sewing machine is one of the most valuable tools somebody in the clothing textiles area is going to use. But obviously in safe hands it's perfectly good, but obviously with visitors and particularly young children around the repair cafe, we're always careful to make sure they keep their distance from things like sewing machines. A key thing that you've got to get right is not only the needle sharpness, but the type of needle for a particular type of material. And obviously as a trained clothing repairer, then you'll know what particular needle you'll need for a particular type of material. For instance, at one extreme, silk at one end and leather at the other would require fundamentally different needle and threads. Bobbins, a particular problem, or can be a particular problem, particularly on an older machine. You can end up with rough edges on a bobbin, which will mean you end up with thread snagging. But our repairers tell me you can polish those even with say a nail file or something to get the area smooth. And generally speaking, it's quite easy to restore a bobbin without having to necessarily buy one. Quite often you'll find that threading the thread through the machine and into the material can be an issue. And again, a skilled clothing repairer will know if that's the problem, what can be done about it. I guess it's fairly obvious even to people who aren't any experts in this, that the type of thread that you use has to be chosen for the particular item that you're repairing. Forever being aware of sustainability, then they're very keen on collecting items that could be used for future repairs. And I only listed one or two, but every time something is approaching going in the bin, then one of our repairers will be say, hang on a minute, I need that bit of elastic, that Velcro, those buckles, or even in the case of the second bullet, bras, you name it. They've all got items on them, hooks, eyes, elastic and so on, which could be used for repair. And Martin's point was very well made, that we're very ingenious at the way we pick items for making repairs from. A lot of problems we get are to do with zips, various problems. Sometimes they're just awkward and a bit difficult to use. I even just showed an old couple how to use a zip, it wasn't even faulty. And but they left very happy even with just that. But obviously at the other end of the spectrum, we have to replace them. Sometimes we could even use the 3D printer to create a part, for instance, a pull to replace a matching one that's broken on the item. And probably the slightly more amusing but very, very important one, if you're trying to restuff a child's toy, for instance, then choosing the right implement, in this case a spoon handle, makes all the difference when trying to get the stuffing around to the right parts of the toy before you reseal it. Again, like all of the topics, I could go on. I said I probably had enough material to go for a couple of days, but as you've all got Saturday mornings you'd probably like back, then I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Again, and again, anybody wants to add another question on clothing and related areas? I mean, there's another question here about, have we had any hostility from sewing machine shops, because sewing machine shops, in the instance given in Southampton, relied on, got income from repairs of sewing machines. I mean, I'm not aware of anything, I'm not aware of anything. I mean, certainly that was something that we thought about in the beginning, particularly with laptop and other repairs. And in fact, we have a shop disking very close to us, and they will take our leaflets. And indeed, even the phone repair shop will take our leaflets as well. So we haven't seen that problem with local suppliers seeing us as a threat. Don't know if
I think, to be fair, the only repairs I've seen being done are, generally speaking, at repairing a small tear. They're not wholesale alterations, and in fact, we certainly wouldn't touch new items of clothing that required completely changing the shape. And generally speaking, I say it's just putting a new button on, repairing a tear, putting a new zip in, not much more than that.
I think that it was more around shops that sell sewing machines in get income from repair. But I think there's a couple of points that came in.
Yeah, we do actually repair sewing machines. We've had a few actually through the doors. That was one of the questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've had that.
Yes.
We've certainly had cycles of that when there's been sewing related TV programs that suddenly we've seen 2 or 3 sewing machines come in, that people have probably got motivated to start sewing again. So suddenly, I think one time we had about 5 sewing machines had come in. So absolutely, we repair, and that's where the collaboration between the sewing workstation and the mechanical workstation works really well. Our biggest issue with clothing repairs is people bringing dirty items. I even had one whip off her jeans while she was wearing them, expecting them to repair the crotch. Always good for a bit of humour in a webinar. People get quite offended when you refuse repairs. Okay, I can see that could happen. Very, very interesting. And not believe what we've had is more of issues with people buying new items. We had a whole cycle of this where we changed a policy where they were expecting us to let up the trousers or whatever, and we considered that not to be a repair, so we stopped that. We set a policy of not doing that.
So we can deal with the hygiene element when we get to the vacuum cleaner case study.
Sure, but it's not something that, and generally what we have is quite a good system that if the issues do arise in the repair the workstations, that they're fed back to the front desk and the team, so we can think about whether we need to change it. So that issue hasn't come up from us, but I can see that it could come up in different places. I would love to learn more about technical repair of clothes. I'm starting my project in Barcelona of repair coffee. Maybe that means repair cafe. I think there is a range of information on technical repair of clothes, and if you were to email me, I have a recommendation, or if others are interested in that, from a previous project I was involved in. We have some more written information there. How do people who are rejected at the front desk take the news, understanding or miffed? We don't necessarily reject people per se. I mean, what we have is, I've had to put in process a policy whereby that was sparked by somebody coming in with 5 repairs and insisting that they were all done at the same time, that we basically have a cycle, so you can book in 1 item, and you go through that cycle, and then they can book in another item. So we're trying to be fair and equitable with people. Generally speaking, where we do have products that we, for whatever reason, we can't repair, people don't get miffed by that. Often people are coming in on a slight wing and a prayer. They hope that we could help us. So it's quite good natured generally. So we haven't really had, any issues with that. So we do not do alterations, only repairs, simple sewing machine repair, nothing complicated. Yeah, that's pretty much what we decided. We recycle pre and post consumer textiles by shredding back to fiber before we can process. We have to take off spinning. We're looking for commercial uses. So I think this is it's a good point, but slightly outside. Maybe there's an opportunity to hook up with a repair cafe in your area, and you can find different repair cafes by going in different parts of the country. By going to the Repair Cafe Foundation website, you can identify by county. So there may be some in the, I think perhaps maybe from memory you're in Yorkshire or somewhere. And also I think there is a lot of expertise around repair. I think of clothing around York University and others. So I think for time, maybe we'll move on once I can get the system going. So we'll move on to the next item, computers.
Yeah, having spent 42 years in computers, then this is probably one of my hotter topics. Golden rule: when you're doing anything with a computer ever, anywhere, just back up everything before you attempt to repair, because one simple keystroke or any other accident, or just attempting anything which looks okay, and you could lose somebody all of their lifetime of data. But and unfortunately a habit that people come in with. They've virtually never backed their stuff up, and we have had people asking us to recover their lifetime of photographs from a disk drive which is actually dead, regrettably. But at least we have a go, and it didn't cost them anything to find out. It's not easy to supply backup service within a repair cafe, so generally speaking, we're relying on warning people to do that. But if they haven't already done it, then we have to just be careful as we go. Not everybody brings in all the various parts they need, and of course, if you have a universal power supply, then you've got half a chance of being able to power up the item and bring in. That's kind of difficult to bring in. Depending on what the problem is, that we might actually want a few cables, USB cable, audio cables, and so on. We're looking in the facility we have that we do have decent Wi-Fi, just about sufficient at least to browse the web or on our phones, which I think almost all of the repairers do pretty regularly. We're pretty much all consulting manuals, YouTube videos, technical sites and so on, are pretty useful to all of us when we've got the model number, the make and so on, but also in the case of computers for testing the computer itself. Very often we find that people haven't ever run a virus check and haven't even got the antivirus software in a computer, and it's not unusual to find that some sort of virus problem is actually causing the difficulties they've got. If you've ever tried to repair a computer, then you'll know that you need almost every screwdriver ever invented. And this is all about anti-repair tactics. We find this in electronics generally, and also clearly in computers, that the manufacturers will almost invent a new screw head just to stop people trying to repair stuff themselves. So you tend to go out and buy a new one instead. But this is where the number of different tools that each of our repairers has comes in useful. Generally speaking, somebody somewhere in our sessions has got a particular screwdriver for every particular screw head. I personally use recovery, but any disk recovery tool might be useful. It's not unusual to come in for items to come in. They've got damaged disks, and with a specialist tool, it is possible to retrieve lifetimes of photographs, documents, and so on. But it isn't really something you can do easily in the repair cafe itself. So I've taken items home and then carefully checked them on my own equipment at home and then returned them, either meeting up with the person the next week or failing that the following repair cafe session.
Dave, your sound is breaking up a little. I don't know.
Okay, I've not moved or changed.
That sounds clearer. That sounds clearer.
I'll speak up a bit. If you've got space in your boot and you don't mind lugging it in, then you might want a monitor to bring in so that you can check perhaps with a screen problem. If you're doing anything at all, starting to remove items, then an anti-static mat's a good idea so you don't introduce any new errors when you're trying to do the repair. This comes up across all the categories. Every time we start taking nuts, screws, bolts out of an item, then ideally you want a tray away from the repair itself so you don't knock them all over. and you actually place the screws in the tray in sequence as you remove them, so that you've got half a chance of putting them back in the right order. Because generally speaking, particularly in a computer, you'll find there's any number of different screws, types, lengths, and so on, and they really have to be put in exactly the hole they came out of. And it's not on there, but you'll find repairers will take a photograph with their phone to make sure we know, for instance, before you disconnect any wiring, how the various wires were connected before you start to disconnect them, so that you've got a good chance of putting them back in the right place. Computers, again, obviously requesting passwords are brought. It's really annoying, of course, when you're trying to help somebody and you can't even get into the machine because they didn't bring the password. Again, like all the other categories, I could go on for another hour or so on this, but let's pause for some QA on computers.
Okay, yeah, just an additional point and then a couple of questions. Yeah, I mean, there's this idea of the built-in product obsolescence. There's a useful company called iFixit who have tackled repairs, and basically what they do is they have to get into the products, they have to often design their own tools because of all the issues that Dave talked about. So first question is, do we tackle any software issues?
Absolutely. You've got to be ready with a computer to tackle anything, of course, and almost any problem is likely to be a combination of some sort of hardware problem, a power problem, and equally software. So generally speaking, we'll check whether the operating system is up to date, whether it's got all of its security patches, with a particular application, again, whether they've got the up-to-date version or whether there's a virus problem. So absolutely, yeah.
Do we tackle any issues with upgrades, software upgrades? What have you seen there?
Very much so, and that's why you need the Wi-Fi, obviously, because almost everybody who brings an item into a computer for repair to us probably hasn't kept their operating system up to date. So it's almost the first thing our repairers would do would be to make sure all of the key operating system is up to date, because you can't really be certain that whether the problem you've got is just that or whether it's something specific to do with another item.
Okay, there's another broad question, a sort of fairly fundamental question. Do we do repairs on site? Yes, we do, and that's the majority of what we do. We physically will repair, around about 65% of the items on the site. But what we also have is, based on the individual motivation and interest of the repairers, is some will take repairs home to tackle the problem and then liaise with the customer. Things like furniture, that's almost exclusively done in the workshop of that particular repairer. So we'll come back to the point on videos, I think a little bit later. So I think perhaps no other specific questions, Dave, on computers at the moment. So maybe I'll try and get the computer.
Yep, okay, go on to electrical.
On to the next one. Yep, electrical.
Okay, at least one or two of my electrical colleagues are on the line, I know. So please jump in if I've got something extra points you want to make or you want to answer some of the questions. This is really a safety aspect. Obviously, ideally, repairers should all have electrical qualifications, and I think most, if not all of ours do. A vital thing before we start and on completion is that we do a personal appliance test, that check on all that comes in and all that leaves. And in fact, we sign the forms to make sure that we've recorded that's been done. And in the case where something fails, then I know that one of the repairers has test fail stickers to put on the item, so that to a degree we protect ourselves from something leaving which is actually failed. We do have a record of that on our on the sticker and on our records. it probably stands to reason anybody who's ever tried to repair anything for electrical item, then you check with the power off first, and then you want to perform all of your safety tests before you even begin to plug it in. Anybody who's had a lawnmower, electric lawnmower, will know the value of a residual current device, which will actually terminate the supply if there's a fault in the electrics. So we're very conscious of the safety aspects here. Like many problems, and computers the same, but certainly with power problems, you want to check everything from the wall socket through to the plug, through to the fuse, through to the cable, right through to probably an internal fuse, before you check anything else, to make sure at least you're dealing with a live appliance which has actually got some power in it. Very useful in the hall that we're in is the number of power sockets, but you'll find that most of the guys bring in extension leads, so we've got extra sockets for almost all the testing that we do. We're very conscious from a safety point of view that apparently safe items for repair actually have capacitors within them which can actually electrocute or at least burn you even when they're switched off. That would be microwaves. If anybody brings an old cathode ray tube TV in, was certainly the case. Microwave oven repairs, we're quite wary of those unless it's something basic like an external cable, fuse or plug. Then anything to do with, for instance, the door alignment or the open and close mechanism, then we're quite wary because you could cause a microwave leakage. So generally speaking, we wouldn't undertake that. That should be done, if at all, by the original manufacturer or somebody who's experienced at checking once the repair's done. There isn't any microwave leakage. Obviously, it's an invisible danger. So anything other than a basic electrical check, then we'd be quite wary of a microwave. Again, the tip there before, take out the parts in sequence and move them somewhere away from the table in case you step back and knock them all over. Yet again, the anti-repair tactics are very visible in electrical appliances, and it's quite frequent using each other's screwdrivers, various different types of screws. Probably one of the most important tools would be a multimeter. The guys are using those almost continuously to check continuity, cabling, batteries, light bulbs, you name it. Quite often we get problems with battery-powered items, and having a few spare ones is always a useful thing. One solitary tale: some children had been allowed to charge and use their own batteries on portable toys. We discovered the children had been putting the batteries in the opposite way around. They'd actually been charged with the opposite polarity they should be, which is extremely dangerous. So you never know what you're going to get in. Okay, that's it on electrical. Any comments, guys, from the electrical side?
Yep. Have any further, Anthony or others on the line? Kevin? Any?
Nothing much else from me other than the obvious ones.
Yeah. So there was a process question where one of I think a couple of questions are now flying in. Somebody, one of the repair cafes has a sort of particular individual who will check everything as part of their process, which is so that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, I agree with cutting the plug off. I've seen that one.
Where we can consider an electrical item that cannot be repaired could be, yeah, okay.
We did once decide about taking the plug off, but we thought that was if someone took it elsewhere to be further repaired. So our process is really to stick the sticker on and remove the fuse.
Right. Yeah. So I'll read this verbatim. We had a toaster that passed a PAT test, but when turned on, tripped a circuit breaker after 2 minutes. The cause was a burnt sultana that expanded with the heat. Just shows the value of the PAT, providing the appliance is safe to use. It can still go wrong with a PAT test, strange but true. I do remember one and Anthony, I can't remember if you can remember this one. It was a toaster that was the problem with it. It was caused by a dead wasp in the toaster.
Yeah, there's lots of toaster things. Always interesting.
Yeah. So do we have? Sorry, go ahead.
We did have one toaster that was must have been made in about 1925. It was basically an open grid with the element which could be touched with your fingers, which came in with a very tatty lead. And the woman was convinced we should repair it, but it was something we've actually refused to repair because it was potentially lethal, really, even if we had put a new lead on it.
Right, excellent. Any more questions on this? So I see one question. Visual
Yeah.
check. Yeah.
Yes, that's the majority of PAT failures will be visual things like a cracked body of something, the lead, the wrong fuse, the plug wired incorrectly, the earth being not on. So you do win quite a lot from the visual test, but obviously you still need to do the electrical PAT test as well. And I think someone did ask a question whether it's onerous. It's not particularly onerous, but you need to have a competent person to do it, and have the equipment, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick point there about the benefit of the collaboration because of the links with UCA, the university. We were able to get a PAT testing kit in a sense that they were happy to donate to us. So there may be people who in the local area who might prepare to donate, and other parts of the PAT process for those who are less familiar is and Anthony, can you help me on this, that we have to send it to be checked and recalibrated each year? That's right, is it?
Yes, the PAT test, we just send it to be calibrated once a year just so we can be sure it's working properly.
Yeah, so that's another thing to consider for those who haven't got the kit as well, and that's not the cost is not too onerous, is it?
It's circa £100 or under £100 really.
So a couple of questions here. So a modern tester is easy to use, e.g. have a particular plug in, press the button, get the pass in 15 seconds, but must be used by competent people. Yep, insurance companies generally won't insure if PAT testing is not done. So certainly that is a question that we have for our in our insurance. The range of PAT testing equipment, is from cheap to expensive. Some do not give reliable results when testing doubly insulated electrical equipment. Could you tell us the make and model of the PAT test equipment you use?
Only if I go and look. I'll go and look.
Okay, we can report that back later. Yeah, this kit would be one that would be used by our technicians at the university. So
Kevin says it's a Robin.
A Robin.
Kevin says it's a Robin.
Okay, that's very fast. Yes,
but don't tell Anthony we worked it out already.
Yeah. So okay, well I think we can perhaps move on to the next section for time. So I have to click the button here to get it moving again. So
okay. All right, I'll just into this one. This actually came out of one of the previous webinars we did, where we happy repairing vacuum cleaners, which on the surface of it seems not too difficult. But in fact, when we looked at it and when I asked the other repairers, we did discover we have had problems with vacuum cleaners. Some of our guys have actually had problems. One particular one was smeared in grease, and there was speculation it had actually been used in a chip shop. One repairer actually opened up a vacuum to start repairing it and inhaled a cloud of dust, and then had immediate breathing problems and a persistent cough the rest of the day, which is sort of concerning with my former risk hat on. Often people arrive with the dust compartment actually full. And many owners, it turns out, don't even know how to empty it, let alone clean out blockages and damage to the pipes, which is very common. So we have a whole range of safety and performance issues with vacuums, which led us to the recommended solutions beneath. So ideally, any visitor bringing a vacuum cleaner should really empty it before they even arrive, and ideally clean it to some degree. If they haven't done, then we prefer them to empty it into a bin outside so that we avoid some of the dust problems. I don't know if we have one unless somebody's brought one, but ideally we need our own vacuum cleaner to clean up dusty appliances, not just vacuum cleaners, obviously. A vacuum to clean the vacuum.
That has happened. That has happened.
Exactly. And in fact, if you get sort of garden equipment or some of the food equipment that comes in, then that would be in fairly regular use, I would think. In the case of the vacuum used in a chip shop, if it was, then it's a reminder in all of the cases that we don't really want to be repairing commercially used appliances. These people should be paying for repairs themselves elsewhere. Again, with my risk hat on, I just wondered whether if somebody brought in a vacuum that had been used, even just an ordinary building refurbishment, whether asbestos could be present in a vacuum somebody brought in, obviously not maliciously, but somebody could inadvertently be bringing a vacuum with asbestos in it. Of course, that's a very invisible and long-term killer. And it finally prompted us to consider how much of the health service PPE argument should apply to repairing things like vacuums, whether we need masks, goggles, gloves, hand rub. And I guess most people have accumulated some of those items already, so it should be easier for us to protect ourselves in future. But obviously that's just a vacuum. It could apply to other items too. So any specific questions do you want to take on that, Martin?
So there was you know, a generic point again, you know, this is going to be important for the future. Perhaps we should use masks. Yep, you know, until we've been quite diligent, but until that particular query emerged, we hadn't really thought about that, the level of the issue of the sort of the dust issues. And we're going to change our policy, or we'll have a discussion at our next board meeting about perhaps, you know, what we do about that. Full or clogged bags is common. On more than one occasion, we have used one clean vacuum to clean out. Yeah, and in fact, you know, thinking about it, you know, that makes a lot of sense to even have that, you know, deliberately in hand and to have a vacuum cleaner as part of our kit. Interesting observation, like the wasp example, carpet cleaner, when dismantled, had a dead mouse in it. I use Q-Tech Easy Pad, quite easy and usable and reliable. I don't know what that.
That's probably the fact checking machine, is it?
Oh, right, okay. We have a few vacuum cleaners with fractured cores in the cable near the appliance or plug. One was used by a blind lady who could have electrocuted herself through a charred cable. The problem is seen more with modern appliances. I think, again, from experience, and Anthony, you know, you maybe comment on this. We have had quite a lot of Dysons, I think, through the, you know, the Repair Cafe over the years.
Yes, yeah, they're very popular. Quite often they're easy fixes, but on occasions it's the motor, so it's quite a significant repair to strip it down and replace the motor.
Right. First vacuum cleaner repair I did took 4 hours due to hidden screws under buttons. Now take a strong magnet to run around the joints to get the spot. Again, very good little tip. The sort of Repair Cafe tip that you know, only comes through experience and facing the problem. So very interesting. Sorry, I had to go at 11. Can I just want to ask a quick question? Are there any technical issues, lessons learned from creative upcycling, that is turning an item? So basically, creative upcycling is something that we tried to do, but we've had sporadic engagement in that, despite Farnham now being, you know, a world craft town with a lot of craft expertise, and we have like the UK's Craft Study Centre. You know, the person that and people that ran that have been very sporadic in their interest, and you know, in a sense, we just, you know, can't just chase on that. So that hasn't been as successful as we thought. You know, so more difficult unless you probably really go after people and try and set something up, putting a lot of motivation to do it. So there was something above here on a. Well, I think I better move on.
Shall we try and race through the final slides, because a number of people saying they've got to leave soon.
Sure. I think, you know, people can leave when they're ready to leave. You know, so. You know, please feel free. If you have to go, you have to go. So on to mechanical.
Okay, generally speaking, mechanical items are a lot of fun to repair, but in fact, they can be more of the heavy items. So we're not averse to repairing an item on the floor on the grounds that it can't fall any further. But if you're going to repair it on a table, make sure it's a solid surface. Even secure it with a clamp to make sure it can't move. Typically, a mechanical item can have sharp edges, so you want to make sure as a repairer you're protecting your hands with gloves or whatever. You know, again, use the appropriate tools, spanners and so on, because an inadvertent use of the incorrect tool can damage the screw head or a nut or something or other, meaning it's almost impossible to put the item back together. Yet again, keeping the parts removed in order. We often do this for almost every repair, but we look up a particular item on the internet, and then the number of times we found something in a troubleshooting set of information is quite common, and obviously that saves a lot of time trying to fix something. Because of the age of the various items, we're quite often dipping into our tool bags for either standard or new tools. Particularly with mechanical, photographing each stage of dismantling can simplify things when you come to put them back together again. Particularly if you've never seen the item before, then reminding yourself what it looked like when it came in can be quite useful. Good old WD-40 regularly gets used. Yet again, a good head torch means you've got two hands to use, but still get a good light on what you're looking at. For small items, and I know, Anthony, I think you're a fan of this, using a magnifying stand or even a camera on a stick, I think would help. It's not uncommon, these items are fairly dusty, dirty, like vacuum cleaners as well. So we'd obviously want to make sure we leave the church hall that we're in is in a similar state to when we arrived. Not always easy. Unlike electrical items, you want to make sure that the item is safe to use when you leave. So there isn't an obvious pat check you can do on a mechanical item, but we'd actually test it in its way it's supposed to be used to make sure, as far as we can, that it's being returned in a safe way for ongoing use. Okay, Martin.
Right. I don't think there is any specific questions on mechanicals at the moment. So again, bear in mind the time issue. Let's move on. So furniture, ceramics, clocks.
Yes, Martin, you alluded to one of the issues here, that we can end up with antiques, and obviously they're a bit of a minefield in some respects, because if they're particularly valuable, then that doesn't mean we won't necessarily touch it, but obviously it might influence the type of repair, the method we use, and how much it's worth spending on fixing it. So we generally speaking question the value and the age of an item before we fix something in this category. If it's a particularly valuable antique and it really needs a proper professional specialist, then we wouldn't even touch it, and we'd ask them to go to even refer them, if we know somebody, to a specialist in that particular area. Assuming it's still something we can and want to repair, then like the clothing, we check whether it's a hidden patch repair or whether it's supposed to be matching exactly. So we're putting a new piece of wood into something and it's got to look exactly the same, or whether in the rare event we actually make a feature of the repair. So it's quite often quite common with these sort of items, because they can take time to fix, that we'll do basic fixes in the repair cafe session itself, but then take items home to a home workshop where it's safer in a number of respects. And if the time-consuming items, you're not spending 2 hours in a workshop repairing one item. May be obvious, but if you're fixing a chair leg and it's obviously a load-bearing joint, then that requires particular care and attention to make sure we return the item in a safe condition to use. Glues is a big item for furniture, ceramics, clocks and so on, and choosing the right glue is very much a specialist's knowledge item that we take care of. Particularly, for instance, if you're repairing ceramics, you need to know whether the item is going to be used for holding food or it's need to work at high temperature and so on. Again, with glues, they typically have solvents in them, particularly as varnishes do as well. So we'd want to make sure that we're only using a very small amount in the repair cafe itself, or taking these away to where we've got proper ventilated workshops. Obviously, if you're getting down to planing or sanding, cutting or sawing something, then you should be taking the normal precautions you would do if you're doing something at home, wearing protective equipment, goggles at the very least, and using a professional clamp to hold something. Ideally, if you've got a vise, one or two of the guys bring in small portable vices, which we can use in the repair cafe itself. Generally speaking, almost any item you glue really needs to be untouched and held in place with clamps for probably 24 hours plus to ensure that it's done its job. So again, it's another aspect of this sort of repair which can't really be done in a 2-hour session. Test the item once you've finished doing your repair, obviously in the same way we would do everything else, to make sure it's safe to use. Particularly items of like chairs where people are actually going to use them for sitting on. So any Q&A on that, Martin?
Nothing specific, but there's a little bit of Q&A going on. But there's a question there in do we ask for donations yet? Yes, we do. We don't sort of ask people in their face, but we have donation jars, we have posters, and that's our prime form of income. And I think from memory, from our stats, our average donation is around about £10. We even, from our experience, have some people who donate even if they don't have a successful repair. They know the work has been put in. So
well, I think the value that people perceive in that case, even if it isn't repaired, is that they've had somebody look at it for free, whereas other places you might take it to would charge you just to look at something and still not repair it.
No, I mean, the general thing is many people come in, you know, hoping that they can get something repaired. So anything we can do for them, advice, repair, people are really grateful. You know, so that's why we have such a high rating. It's 98% customer satisfaction level, and that's reflected in other surveys as well. So, right, just into the final section here. So 3D printing.
3D printing. There's one question. Do we charge for parts? I think this is quite a useful generic question.
Yeah, I think we responded to that, Dave. Anthony and I responded to that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. 3D printing. Now this is the deep techie stuff here. So bear with me if it's beyond your normal experience. The first thing to say is that 3D printing, very clever though it is, shouldn't be used for safety critical parts. So anything that's particularly load bearing or particularly important for the safety of an item, then you shouldn't really be using 3D printing, at least certainly not the printing that we're able to do. In order to produce a model of the part you want, you're really into computer-aided design software on a PC. Again, we use Fusion 360, but there are other tools that you can use. It's important to make sure the software you've got and the hardware you've got work properly. So we're always making sure that the software is kept up to date. Now we're into slicer software now. Now that's the software that chooses the shape of each slice that is made to compose the item, and you need to get a good slicer to get the design, add supports, and get the right orientation for the part. For those who aren't familiar with it, filament is the material in a little tube or little, almost looks like a wire that goes into the machine, which actually is used to melt and make up the item. And choosing the right filament material for the purpose, be it for strength or temperature, whatever, is really important. Setting the printer up and maintaining it is really key, because there are things that can go wrong with it which can be easily sorted by cleaning the surfaces, making sure the alignment's correct and so on. It isn't as automatic as you might hope. Getting the right print layer and the nozzle diameter for the machine are really key success factors, and even checking the bolts and calibrating the initial layer height can actually make sure you get a better result. If you're cleaning the surface on which the item is made, then you want something like isopropyl alcohol or acetone. And of course that leads to the next one, which is make sure you not experiencing the fumes or dust from the machine. But I guess if you've not seen one, you won't appreciate this, but actually printing a quality item can take a long time, hours and hours. So it's a good idea, if you're making something that's likely to take a long time printing, a large part with complex design, then do a quick inaccurate print so that you can actually check it's going to fit before you commit to the full quality longer term print. I'm sure if you're an expert in this, you've probably...
Dave, can you stay closer to your mic because it's breaking up again?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm really finished this now. So basically, run a test print to check the design is going to fit with your particular item you're repairing. I think that's about it, really. I guess if you're into 3D printing, there's probably tons of techie questions. If there are, then maybe we should handle those offline.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know if Anthony wants to add any other points, but a real practical repair cafe sort of point is that our main guy who was took forward the repair cafe, the 3D printing project and started it up. Suddenly we were faced with the fact that he was going to move to Scotland, so we've had to try and look at a couple of the repairers, some who had a bit of knowledge of 3D printing, to take on that, and Anthony, one of our repairers, has sort of taken that on as a sort of project. So it's good to probably have at least two people, engaged with that, just in case somebody moves or whatever. Did you have any other points from what you've picked up, Anthony?
No, I think Dave's covered most of the salient points. The biggest one really is that the 3D printer is very useful, but it's not the panacea for fixing everything. Yeah.
Okay, so I think just a couple in closing before having a bit of an open round for questions. Is that this dovetails with a question earlier on. So and what we're doing on the 14th of July is running another session like this, sharing knowledge on what other repair cafes are doing in lockdown. And some have got sort of physical click and collect type models. So we've got 7 case studies, and a few are using online fixing approaches. So we've decided to use a Facebook approach that is based on a Q&A system, whereby we run, in the time of our repair cafe, that we'd run our repair cafes normally, an advice session. So people will post their questions, we'll have repairers online, and then in parallel to that, we've got a WhatsApp group where knowledge can be shared. And essentially it's a Q&A system. So the output of that is advice rather than repairs. So that's what we're doing, and if you're interested in that, we'll be running an event on the 14th. So there was just a couple of points and observations. So there was this issue of providing the advice, not just the repairs. General questions: how did you reach out to get the volunteer fixes? Well, again, we covered that in a previous session on managing repair cafes that, again, we're going to repeat because people were interested. So basically, we use a full portfolio of communication tools. So from email marketing, this is to attract the repairers, through to, we have Nextdoor in Farnham, which is a local social media group. We use Facebook, we use Instagram, we use Twitter. We occasionally get press, so it's really like with anything else, just getting your message out there, because you will find that there will be people in your community who've got expertise. Why do you not attempt repairs of petrol-powered items, particularly if you have access to an outside area? So I mean, we just decided for risk issues, quite simply, that we don't do petrol-driven items. We also had, I think, a gas-powered item that we did do outside the church area, but in retrospect, we felt that probably wasn't something we wanted to tackle.
It's really lack of outdoor space. There's very little outdoor space we have access to, and there's no tables to work on out there, and the tools aren't there. So really, it's just not the practical point of view, which is why we don't do petrol things.
I think the problems too with volatile materials is the risk of fire.
Yeah.
That's also very important in an enclosed area. So
so it's a combination of risk and physical, lack of infrastructure in a sense. So I found it takes a while to build a team of fixers. Yeah, I mean, we sort of, I guess, and the other guys, maybe Peter, Anthony, as the older standing members, and Dave and others, I can't remember back to the beginning, but everybody seemed to gel and get on pretty well, really. I mean, we built the core team is about 20 to 25, and that did sort of, increase over the years. But we've had it, because I looked at it, perhaps about 80 different people through, providing advice at different times. Some just, it wasn't for them. Some found it a bit stressful. A whole variety of, some were even traveling a long way and decided not to do it. So yes, it does take time, but we found a remarkably good sort of team approach. Do you guys have any comments?
I think sometimes somebody brings something into repair, says, I've got skills in repairing something else. Can I decide to do it?
Sure. In terms of the sort of team working, I mean,
that's very important, teamwork. Actually, there have been a number of repairs we've had where actually the team working together have managed to do much better than a single repairer could do on their own. Yeah.
Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah, so
we love
I think
Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah, I think that we have one of our pictures is a teddy bear repair where we've got about 4 sets or eight hands involved. So, and I think there's an infamous one with you, Peter, doing a vacuum cleaner repair with about 6 hands involved. So, how do you get such amazing volunteer repairs? Well, I mean, in a sense, we may be lucky, but we also get the message out and people enjoy it. So they come back, probably tell people about it. So we did fix a chainsaw recently, but only start rewind spring. We have had chainsaws through. Have we had chainsaws through?
Electric ones, yes.
Electric ones, yeah. So, what do you remember what the issue with that was?
I think it was a cable issue, actually, Martin. There was a break in the cable.
Yeah. thank you. There's lots of thank yous here coming in, which is great. So yeah, recording. Yes, we'll make the recording available later. There's various people. Repair Cafe Paris are doing a Zoom. Can you run this with volunteers, or do you have employed coordinators? No, everybody's a volunteer. We're able to do some of the administrative aspects through the links to UCA, but everybody's a volunteer. How frequently do you open? We run between 10 and 12 when we're physically operating, with last doors, at 12:30, but we close at 1. We have, trialed longer periods of time, but we found a drop off. So we found that as an optimum time. We started with 4 years ago, and we now have 25 just by word of mouth. Yep, and customers voluntary. Yep, we similarly, absolutely. Teamwork is essential. Everybody learns. Our repair cafe is generally open for 3 hours once a month. Yep, sounds pretty similar. Thank you very much. There's this whole positive feeling and community feeling, as another comment, which is, we highlighted, earlier and has come out of the research. I think the polo shirts is a great idea. Yeah, we had quite a lot of debate on that, but it did end up being very, very good. Apart from when we had to have a big photo session, I think for the press, and I've put on a few pounds. So I think my large one I had to squeeze into a small one.
Don't worry, you were stood next to me, so I didn't look so bad.
So great stuff, etc., etc. We had our first 2 Ledbury repair cafes in February and March, and they were really successful following the exit model of the. Malvern are going to present what they're doing. Malvern Hills at the session on the 14th. We have polo shirts. It is useful from a safeguarding point of view. Okay, in relation to children. Okay, interesting point. Haven't thought of in terms of who are the actual nominated responsible people. We haven't yet had offer since lockdown. Not sure how to proceed. Online is problematic as the largest user group are elderly and not online. Well, that is a typical demographic, is 55 or even 65 plus. We found that we did have quite a number already on Facebook, and I think our first session we had about 20 or so interventions, 20 Q&As, something like that, and that's only by pushing it through the Facebook, promoting it through Facebook. In this, we've trialed 2. We've got a third one we're promoting to our other communications list. I mean, our challenge more was we wanted to run it 10 to 12, but we didn't want to be totally inundated with questions that we couldn't respond to. So this is going to be a test for us next Saturday with more promotion. What is the level of demand for the Q&A, and it may be that there may not be as much demand as we think, for exact reasons you say, that the demographics of the users are 60, 65 plus, but a lot of people of older generations are using Facebook, Zoom, and perhaps the younger people are moving into things like TikTok. So maybe things are changing in terms of use of social media. We use tabards rather than polo shirts. More scope, different size people. Yep, all good. We use identical aprons made from denim and made from, all good. So that's a good example of upcycling. This gives identity notes. Good, all good. Yeah, perhaps we should give a Q&A a try then. On Facebook, yeah. I mean, we've had some trial and error issues because we found actually Facebook a bit clunky, but it is used by our customers, we found, so that's why we used it. What is the
Actually,
address for the next?
one of the things that worked really well, Martin, was the not just because I set it up, the fact that we could use WhatsApp behind the scenes. So as repairers, we weren't actually debating with ourselves in public on Facebook. We're actually trying to solve a problem behind the scenes on WhatsApp. And then where we were satisfied we'd got the right solution, and the chosen person would then go back to Facebook and put the answer in.
So again, that's another example of innovation that's emerged in a sense because of lockdown. We wouldn't necessarily be doing these webinars unless we were doing this. Certainly wouldn't be looking online, but we found WhatsApp as a really good tool, not just to share points within the session, but we've found it a very useful approach for other aspects. So we've set up individual ones for the product categories, for things like marketing, for those of us involved in different aspects of the Repair Cafe. So I think the WhatsApp tool is absolutely a very useful tool. So Ken, perhaps if you could, if any of you are interested in the our Facebook session, maybe if you want to email me and I'll send you the link. The email's there, because obviously not everybody's going to be interested in that. What as I said, we're also going to do is run on the 14th of July a session where we're going to share experience, of what 7 repair cafes are doing, their different approaches. If you don't already have anything, then Slack would be a better option. Yeah, we've looked at a variety of different social media options, and WhatsApp seems to fulfill our needs. There are multiple tools that are emerging, and Slack's particularly good at managing emails related to different themes and categories. But I think WhatsApp is working for us. Do we have any final questions or observations? Also useful for us. Did people find it useful? Would it be useful to perhaps run it again at some stage, maybe after the summer, where maybe you could even perhaps invite some of your other repairers as part of your own team building, possibly? Any feedback is useful. So we've got 2 other webinars apart for our own, one targeted at our own Farnham community, one on the 14th of July on sharing the case studies, and another session on the more of the management side of the Repair Cafe, because I think we had over 50 attend that, and there was a lot of interest in that. So we are recording this, and we'll make this available. And we will send, as you guys are on the list already, we will advertise the other sessions during July. We, in terms of the broader webinars such as this, we'll take a break during August, but we'll then, consider, repeating these if people are interested. So any final thoughts or questions? Thank you. Lots of useful. We'll be asking volunteers to watch your webinars if possible. That's great. We're happy to share this as part of our charitable, focus about getting the message out. So I think, there's others who are around offering repair skills outside of repair cafes. I mean, we're very focused in what we do purely around repair cafes. There are others that do other, provide different repair initiatives. So I think I will close it there unless there are other, points that anybody wants to make. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you or hearing you in a webinar in the future. So thank you very much, and thanks very much to Dave and Auntie and Kevin for chipping in with additional comments.
See you, Anthony.
Cheerio.
Oh, and sorry, and
Yeah. Still here? Has he gone? I can see you, Peter.
Yeah, I don't know.
sorry,
No.
and thank you, Peter, as well. Sorry about that, Peter.
Yeah, don't worry. Whoops.
Oh, you've just fallen over. Let's
Well,
beer.
there you go. Yeah, see you all again soon.
Yes, indeed. Hope everybody's well.
Yeah, we're all fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Catch up
Cheers then.
soon.
Bye
Cheerio.
bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.